Okay, I'm here to respond to the claim that social networking sites may be detrimental to society. My opponent's secondary claims were that social networking sites negatively affect relationships, they facilitate cyberbullying, and they expose users to predators like pedophiles and burglars. And I'm basically just going to show you another angle to their claims to show you that social networking sites are not detrimental to society. So first off, some information was given to show that social networking sites negatively affect relationships. They actually weaken the claim. There was a good amount of time spent on texting and how when people are together, they're using their phones texting, and that causes them to ignore one another. Well, that may negatively affect a relationship, but it's irrelevant to their claim of social networking. This is more of just a phone use problem. She then contradicted herself by claiming that social media prevents people from having face-to-face interaction. She then went on to say that people might message in order to hang out. So people are using social media to message and then have face-to-face interaction. Well, if her claim is that social media prevents people from having face-to-face interaction, socialnetworking.procon.org offers the opposite side of this, that social networking sites facilitate face-to-face interaction. People use social media to network at in-person events and get to know people before personal, business, and other meetings. Pew Research Center's Internet and American Life project found that messaging on social media leads to face-to-face interactions when plans are made via the sites and social media. Users message close friends an average of 39 days each year, while seeing close friends in person 210 days each year. So basically social media, as we all know, it gives us a way to connect with each other and set up meetings, whether it's personal or business, showing that it's actually positively advancing our relationships. My second point is that the problems and issues from cyberbullying are not exclusive to social networking sites, and that so it's not the source of the problem to our society. Let's see. When talking about cyberbullying, the advocate talked about how people would joke saying that cyberbullying isn't real, or how you can just shut off your computer and walk away. She then moved on to claim that there is no way to run from it. Well, like bullying, in Ditch the Label, an anti-bullying campaign, they say that cyberbullying cases can often go unreported by victims for fear of what people may say. So, but that doesn't mean that you cannot face the problem. Like, if you feel like you can't run from it, it doesn't mean that you can't face it. And the same article states that you can screenshot anything that you think could be cyberbullying and keep a record of it on your computer. And then you can block and report the offending users to the appropriate social media platform. So basically, there are ways to address cyberbullying. So cyberbullying, it was described by my opponent as being hurt or abused by rumors and lies that are spread over social media. However, this is not exclusive to social networking sites. As a Center for Problem-Oriented Policy, an article, defines bullying as having two key elements, repeated harmful acts and an imbalance of power. It involves repeated physical, verbal, or psychological attacks or intimidation directed against a victim who cannot properly defend him or herself because of size or strength, or because the victim is outnumbered or less psychologically resilient. This just shows that bullying has been around before social media, and that social media is not the source of these problems, and that it's not exclusive just to social media, meaning that the social media is not the source of the problem to our society, is what was stated. Now on to my third point, is that social networking sites provide means of privacy and protection from threats of predators. Now it was mentioned by my opponent in their claim that there is a threat of people online with malicious intentions, and that problems arise because they may have direct access to your contact information or photographs. But the thing is, you can control these things through your privacy settings. As an article called Social Networking Privacy, they advise to become familiar with the privacy settings available on any social network you use. They give an example that on Facebook, to make sure that your default privacy setting is friends only. Alternatively, use the custom setting and configure the setting to achieve maximum privacy. And each of our social networking sites offer similar settings. In response to social networking sites may be detrimental to society, I've showed that social networking sites actually facilitate face-to-face interactions, and that problems and issues from cyberbullying are not exclusive to social networking sites, and they're not the source of the problem, and that social networking sites provide means of privacy and protection from threats and predators. Thank you.
All right, Nathan, all the structural stuff is fine. You've got basically kind of this alternative angle that you're going to take. We need to make sure that this angle that you talk about is mutually exclusive with the position that the advocate is taking. And I think at a couple of places you're close to that, although in essence on the second 2 points, you're really kind of diminishing the claim to some degree. On the first point on texting, I think that there's an interesting argument to be made here about whether or not texting constitutes a form of social media. It certainly is a form of electronic communication, but does it have the same function? I'm not sure that it applies that way. But there are messaging through social media that do apply, and I thought that your answer here was pretty good, that these actually lead to more face-to-face interaction, and you had an interesting statistic. I'm not exactly sure how that number works, the average number of messages versus the average number of days that they spend. I don't know how they measure message days or contact days. That would be something that would have to be explained a little bit more with the study that you cite, but it does seem to apply to this particular issue and suggest that people who have these social media networks where they are messaging other people apparently still have a substantial number of contacts outside of those networks, and in fact maybe speak more frequently to people as a consequence. On the cyberbullying point, I think that you basically are making a causality argument here that the source of the problem is really the disproportionate power or the abuse that somebody else wants to use, and that the technology is not really the source of that particular power. And you point out ways in which that power, for instance, can be equalized. If the definition of bullying is that people can't defend themselves, can't protect themselves, they are on unequal footing, and in fact you show that they can block it, they can complain about it, they can take a screenshot, they can change settings, and they can report all these kinds of things. I think that's very useful. By the way, it would be interesting to note if any of these social media sites have in fact acted on the basis of complaints that they've received from others about this kind of abusive behavior. Do people get banned from sites? Do their accounts get closed down? A couple of examples I think would make that point a little bit more convincing. And then you basically, like I said, come back to the same argument, and that is that bullying is really a result of a long-term process that exists, and that the access to social media sites is just a technique. It is not the source of this particular problem. And then on the third point, you're arguing that we've got privacy and protection abilities that people simply are not utilizing effectively to prevent some of the problems. You don't really deny that those problems might exist, but you do say there's a way to react to them. And I think that that's a reasonable response, although I do think that it would have been helpful to maybe analyze the advocate's evidence and reasoning on this point a little bit more. I thought you summarized your position, though, very effectively. Thank you.